For warriors like Yusuf, the world was opening up before them. They were a new power on the verge of conquest. Meanwhile, in Western Europe, Christian knights were wasting their strength in endless feudal wars, fighting over small pieces of land. He called on the knights of Christendom to stop their fratricidal wars and instead turn their weapons against a common enemy, promising complete absolution to those who would join this armed pilgrimage. His call stirred deep religious fervor and a desire for personal salvation among the European people. The call did not appeal only to the nobility. A popular movement known as the People's Crusade was formed, consisting largely of peasants lacking military discipline. Driven by the belief that their innocence would prevail, they marched east, but without preparation and organization. Once in Asia Minor, they were quickly confronted by the professional Seljuk army. At the Battle of Scimitar, a peasant army of 20,000 was completely annihilated by a small Turkic force. This disastrous defeat showed the difference between zeal and military prowess. Finally, in October 977, they reached Antioch. The city, protected by rugged terrain and strong walls, was considered untenable without treachery. The defenders of Antioch, confident in their fortifications, prepared for a long siege. The siege lasted through the winter. The Crusaders faced severe food shortages, and famine and disease ravaged their ranks. The city eventually fell not by force, but by treachery. Bohemond bribed a guard, promising money and status. After taking Antioch, the Crusaders themselves were besieged. A powerful Muslim army led by Kerboha arrived. When hope was almost gone, a religious phenomenon occurred. The Holy Spear was found, giving them confidence and morale. On June 7, 1099, they first saw Jerusalem. The city was well defended, and the Muslim soldiers inside prepared for a siege. The siege began, but the Crusaders faced a serious problem: a lack of wood to build siege engines. Salvation came from the sea. The timely arrival of Genoese and English ships at the port of Jaffa brought the necessary materials. With the new supplies, they built huge siege towers to attack the city walls. On July 15, 1099, the final assault began. After a fierce battle, Godfrey's tower reached the walls. The city fell, and a terrible massacre followed. The defenders fought to the death. After the massacre, the Crusader leaders reached the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. They had achieved their goal. The Holy City was liberated. This victory led to the establishment of the Crusader States in the Levant, outposts of Western Christianity that would last for nearly 200 years, laying the groundwork for future conflicts. But not all the Crusaders went straight east. A multinational fleet en route to the Holy Land stopped in Portugal. There, they were persuaded by the King of Portugal to join the reconquest with the promise of booty and a papal pardon for fighting the Muslims in Iberia. The Siege of Lisbon began in July 1147. The Moorish defenders put up fierce resistance for months. Finally, after nearly 4 months, the Crusaders' siege techniques paid off. The capture of Lisbon was the only significant military success of the entire Second Crusade, but it was not the main objective in the Holy Land, reflecting their disunity of their efforts. The German and French armies chose to march overland through Byzantine territory, but the route was fraught with danger, not only from the enemy, but also from their own allies. Relations between the Crusaders and the Byzantines were strained. Driven by logistical needs, the Western armies frequently plundered the lands they passed through, causing hostilities. The French army, which followed, was faced with a terrible sight and a land that had been plundered, making their march even more arduous. Meanwhile, in Damascus, news of the Crusader chaos reached the Muslims. The city, ruled by the Burid dynasty, had been neutral, even allied with the Christian kingdoms. Once in the Holy Land, the Crusader leaders made a disastrous strategic decision. The decision was made. The mighty Crusader army advanced to besiege Damascus. Initially, they had the advantage. They quickly captured the gardens to the west of the city, which provided them with abundant food and water. Inside the city, the defenders, though taken by surprise, quickly fortified their lines. The siege lasted only a few days. Internally divided and fearful of a counterattack, the Crusader leaders decided to retreat in disgrace. The Second Crusade ended in failure and bitterness. The defeat of the Crusaders consolidated Nur ad-Din's power, uniting Syria and creating a Muslim front stronger than ever. And within Nur ad-Din's ranks, a young warrior was beginning to rise, one who would one day complete the work Zengi had begun and challenge the very existence of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. His name was Saladin. His rise was not sudden. Born into Crete, raised in the traditions of Islamic scholarship and military discipline, he was shaped by both faith and ambition. Under Nur ad-Din, he learned that victory was not gained by zeal alone, but by patience, unity, and strategy. While the Crusaders were often fractured by rivalries between French, German, and Italian princes, the Muslims slowly forged cohesion under leaders like Zengi, Nur ad-Din, and eventually Saladin. His vision extended beyond Syria and Egypt. He sought to unite the Muslim world under one banner, believing that only through unity could they reclaim Jerusalem. Meanwhile, in Europe, the Crusader triumphs became woven into legend. Songs of chivalry celebrated knights who braved deserts and fortresses, and the papacy found in the Crusades a powerful tool to strengthen its influence over kings and nobles. Yet the reality was grimmer. Tens of thousands lay dead, cities reduced to ashes, and deep wounds inflicted upon relations between East and West. Trade routes expanded, knowledge flowed back from the Islamic world, medicine, mathematics, philosophy, but so too did mistrust and hatred, sowing seeds of future conflict. The later Crusades would prove less successful. The failure at Damascus haunted the European courts, and political divisions at home sapped their strength. Some lords treated the Crusades as a chance for personal enrichment, while others sincerely sought redemption. For the common people, however, the dream of a holy war often ended in hunger, disease, or death far from home. Even so, the idea of the crusade would not die. Pope after pope issued new calls, and armies once more marched eastward. Saladin's moment finally came in 1187 at the Battle of Hattin. With discipline and patience, he lured the Crusader army into the arid hills, cutting off their access to water. Exhausted and desperate, the knights were overwhelmed. The true cross, carried into battle as a sacred relic, was captured. Jerusalem fell soon after, not with the massacre of 1199, but with a negotiated surrender that spared lives and stunned the Christian world. For the first time in nearly 90 years, the Holy City was back in Muslim hands. From that moment, the Crusades entered a new phase. Kings such as Richard the Lionheart would sail east, clashing with Saladin in battles that became legendary. Though Jerusalem would not be permanently recaptured by the Crusaders, the struggle left an indelible mark on both civilizations. The Crusader castles, from Crac des Chevaliers to Kerak, stood as stone testaments to their ambition, while Muslim chroniclers remembered Saladin as a symbol of justice and piety. Thus, what began with the People's Crusade of peasants and dreamers unfolded into a 200-year struggle that reshaped Europe and the Middle East. It was a tale of faith and fanaticism, of bravery and betrayal, of fleeting victories and crushing defeats. Above all, it was a reminder that history is not shaped by zeal alone, but by unity, vision, and the relentless march of time. And yet, even after the great clashes of kings and sultans, the Crusades never truly ended in the minds of those who fought them. For Europeans, they became a mythic memory of Christian unity, however fleeting, against a powerful adversary. For Muslims, they were remembered as invasions resisted by heroes who defended their faith and land. The scars of these wars echoed for centuries, influencing diplomacy, trade, and even cultural exchanges long after the last Crusader stronghold had fallen. The Crusades were not merely wars for holy cities. They were wars that defined identities, reshaped borders, and left behind a legacy of both progress and division, an inheritance still felt in the modern world.